Hi Flosstube, it's Lori of Mischievous Stitches. It is Saturday, June the 24th, and I'm back again this Saturday to show you just a few things and to show you some of my finished pieces that I have. I pulled them out of the cedar chest, and we won't go through all of them, but I'll try to pick out some of the nicer pieces. But I'm still on vacation. I took 11 days off, and it's coming to a close, and I have been making great progress on my Speak to the Earth piece. So I had made a goal for myself last week to finish, the piece is broken up into 3 layers as far as the chart is concerned, and my goal was to finish the second third of the pattern. So I took it out of the Q-snip so I could move it today. Let me get something to put behind it. And that's where I'm at. Oop, still showing some. Right here is officially these over 1 letters here are the bottom of the second layer of the pattern. So I'm going to work on the area where this squirrel is and bring it down, and I will officially make my goal for the week. Right here you can see the start of a deer. That's his antlers. But this piece gets more and more beautiful with every stitch. And I stitched yesterday. Oh my goodness, my butt was numb. I sat on it for so long. I got up yesterday morning. I did not have anything to do. We had some family thing going on. So I was, just kind of real introspective and needed to be alone with my thoughts, I guess you could say. But I sat here for most of the day by myself and just stitched the day away. So my husband come home, we had dinner. Once he got ready for bed, I sat back down again and went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can't tell you the last time I've done that, because normally I'm around 11:30 I'm ready to go to bed. But I was watching, and I know I'm going to say this word wrong, but I was watching the Netflix show Versailles and watched a few episodes of that, but really liked that, and the history of the place. So I worked on that, and I'll work on it again. But I've met my goal for the weekend. So I am closing in on a finish. I'm more than halfway done, and it feels great. But this week, while Natasha was here, I had realized that I had stitched this border wrong. Now the pattern tells you it has a normal color key, and then it has an instruction sheet, and it has a sheet of how to do the specialty stitches. So I'm working on the queen stitch here, and I had realized that what I had done was follow the color key for those satin stitches. It shows the color and the lines, but it was for back stitching, not satin stitches. So that's what I had done, and I thought it was a little odd, and it was the normal way you would do a border, because it was one line. You've got your 2 threads, and it was one line in the center of those 2 threads, and I just went with it, and I thought, this just doesn't look right. Well, I'm doing the queen stitches, and I noticed the key for the specialty stitches, and it talks about the satin stitches. So I've had a lot of reverse stitching on this project, but it's not deterred me. I'm moving towards that finish, and I'm happy with it. Talking about my stitching, I've gotten different questions on my videos about how often I stitch. Now this week is not the rule, it's the exception, because I'm on vacation. Normally during a work week, I may stitch for about 45 minutes on my lunch break, and I may not stitch at home. Or it may be the reverse. I'll stitch at home and not stitch at work. There are the rare days where I stitch both, but I would say typically I stitch about an hour each day. And I'd say an hour to 2 hours each day. It's always been my goal to try to put 3 thread color changes in each day, or 3 thread lengths in a piece each day, because you make more progress than you realize I've noticed even with Instagram, I've not been posting updates of my stitching as much, but Blitz Stitch often post every day. I know that Emily kind of does that as well, and you can really see the progress. Even little bits of progress is progress. And I thought, I want to keep track of that too. I want to see my daily progress that I make, and I may not keep up with it once I get back from vacation, but this week I've been on it. Also, when I stitch, when I'm stitching with 2 threads, I prefer to stitch on a larger count with 1 thread, but I stitch with 2 threads and I railroad the stitches. So sometimes I do, depending on the piece, sometimes I do both legs of the cross, so I'll railroad this one as well as this one. Other times I will only railroad the top stitch. With this one, I am only railroading the top stitch. I also separate my threads before stitching with them, meaning when I cut my length of thread from the DMC and I separate the stitch, the threads that I'm going to stitch with, you're stitching with 2. And some, in the past, I would pull just the 2 strands out from the 6-stranded, from the skein. But what I do now is I separate those 2 and then put them back together. In my mind, it just kind of is like a fabric softener. It fluffs it up a bit. It may be false, maybe a stitcher's tail, but that's just the way I do it. I also, someone had mentioned for me to get the snag nabbit when I was having problems with my stitches laying correctly, and that has really helped. When you're stitching over 2, you've got basically 2, 4, 6, 8 threads going down in one hole in the center, and sometimes those threads just do not want to enter that hole correctly or don't want to lay right. They pucker around the edges. That snag nabbit has been great for just kind of giving those threads just a tiny little tug. Let me show it to you real quick for those who haven't seen it. I got it on 1, 2, 3 stitch, and it's very inexpensive. I'm just concerned because of the size of it that I may at one point lose it. Oops. Sorry about that. But this is it. And you probably can't see this. I don't know if my camera will focus. You can see that it just has like an etching on the tip here. It's just a tiny bit rough. So when you pull it through, it just kind of gently tugs at those threads. So it's been wonderful. What else? I did go to one of my favorite junk stores this week. They had a frame there when I went a couple weekends ago that I thought that would fit the By the Bay piece. Well, of course, I didn't have the dimensions on my By the Bay piece, even though they had a measuring tape at the counter for you to borrow for such things. So I did measure it, and I had to go into that town this week. I took my dad with me, and we went in there, and of course it's going to fit the By the Bay piece perfectly. I'm not going to frame it without matting. It's a little bit larger than the dimensions of my actual fabric, but with the mats it's going to be perfect. It's black, and it's the old plaster coated frame. So, I'm looking forward to having it framed in that. The frame itself was $24.50, so I felt like I got a steal when you compare that to the prices that you can pay when you actually have something framed. Now, I'm new to this framing myself, so I'm not real sure how much it will cost me to have a mat cut for that piece, but I do need a framer's expertise when I go to measure that out. So I'll keep you all posted on that. And while we were there, I look around, and I found I've found a queen hoop there in that store before. And if you don't know much about they're wooden hoops from the 40s, and they're American made. And they have the tensioner on the top of the hoop that you spin to tighten the hoop or relax it. It just has the word queen on it. Well, there's also oval frames that are called Duchess frames. And I had walked through there once before, and I had posted it on Instagram. Someone, let me go back just a tad. You know how everyone is now taking the, it's like balls of twine and painted balls are all the rage just for decoration. Well, someone had taken those hoops and nested them together and wired them together as decoration. And when I saw the tensioner on that frame, that it was Queen, I had to rescue it. Well, this time when I was picking up the frame, I found an oval Duchess frame, so I had to save that as well. There was also a used bookstore on the way home. My dad loves books, and I have memories of him just sitting on the floor when I was a child, just perusing one thing or another. He is just one of those bright people that if he wants to do something, he'll go get a book. That was before YouTube. Go get a book and look it up, and he will figure out how to do it. He is just amazing with that. So anyway, I thought he would enjoy going to that secondhand bookstore, and of course, you know what I'm looking for. They had one shelf, maybe a 24-foot wide shelf of cross stitch that wasn't even full. Nothing that caught my eye, nothing that had to come home with me. I did find this American Country Needle Point, and I wanted to read in my kitchen, and roosters and chickens, and there were some really cool needle point pieces in this, like here, and they actually use feathers for his tail. Now when I'm going to do this, I don't know, but I have the book when I decide to do it. And talking about that buying, on Natasha and I's little friendship video, I was remarking on the fact that I keep buying things, and she said for you guys to call me out if you see me doing that on Facebook. Don't do. Well, you're not going to see me because I don't do it on Facebook. But what was so funny about that was I was showing her on eBay some of the things that I was watching. You know, patterns that you like. You, for whatever reason, you don't want to buy at that time, or maybe they're in a bid or whatever. So one of them, she said, oh, I had that at one time and I got rid of it. This is the woman who didn't want me to buy another thing. She texted me yesterday and she said, oh, they still have that pattern on 1, 2, 3 stitch, and it's cheaper than the one you were watching. So before I even responded to her text, I went and got it with the fabric. And when I told her, she said, oh, I'm going to have to go buy it too. This is exactly my problem. Not only am I enabled by you guys, we so easily influence each other's purchases. So I just thought that was funny, and I would share it with you. I also this week, or actually yesterday, got this in the mail. This is Nantucket Rose by Lavender and Lace. And Dina from Half Stitch Cross Stitch is doing a stitch along starting, I believe it's August 1st. And I decided to join in after hearing about it on Emily's C's Eclectic Possessions last Flosstube video as well. So if you're interested, just search it out. It's just an event page, not an actual Facebook page as of yet. I don't believe it is, but just look that up. And don't cringe. This is my finished roll. This stays in my cedar chest. This is the things that I don't have framed for one reason or another. So I am not going to pull out all of them, but I thought I would pull out a few just to show. So I'll be in and out of the frame. And I think this is the oldest one on here, and I stitched this, was I in high school? Anyway. I might have been out of high school, but this was in I was in high school, 89. And it's stitched on a real small count. But I think this is the oldest one that I have. My mom has some older ones. But even then, I was self-taught. That's not too bad for a back for a teenage girl. What else do I have in here? Well, lots of freebies. There was a time when my kids were small. You know, you just can't... it's not that our craft is expensive. It's just an expense. And there was a time when our children were small. You know, we had three children, and we're doing everything we can to save money and get by, that this was an unneeded expense. So I have lots of freebies in here that I will probably never do anything with, but it was just, stitching clears my mind, and it was a way to help me get from day to day. But this is one of my older whips too. This is from '92, and I do eventually want to get this one framed. But I love this one. I don't know who he's by. I know that I bought it at a place that at the time was here in town called the Old Colonial Store. Does anyone remember that place? But I really love him. So I will eventually finish him up. Let's see what else we got in here. This one. I can't remember the name of the designer. I want to say it was like Nicola. Don't quote me on that, but I found this one was just a fun stitch. It was so interesting. My son was really into those I Spy books, and it's like an I Spy chart. So look at his eyes, and on the, you know, the right, is it left? It's my left. His right eye, he has a starfish. There's a trident on his nose. And if you look up top above, his eyebrows are actually the hair of a mermaid as she comes down the side here. And then the fish are his mustache and a seashell. This was just fun. It was just really, really fun. And it's Poseidon. So this one I stitched exclusively at work. And I love this and would really love to do more on silk gauze. This was an Erica Michaels kit, and this is the Serenity Prayer. And don't mind the stain there because it's not going to bother the finished result. But so I'll fold it down. But look at that. I don't even know what count this silk gauze is. I just know it's silk gauze, and I had a great time stitching this. My mom had a plaque with the Serenity Prayer on it in her bedroom for a long time when I was a child. And once again, it's another prayer that just means something to me, because it's just when I memorized, you as a child, you pass by something and you read it, and you know, next time you read it again, and before you know it, it's memorized. So, I'm looking. This is another really old one. My mom had this hanging, just pinned up on the wall when I finished it. I was probably 13, 14 when I finished this one. At the time I had a thing for giraffes, you know. Being a tall woman myself, I guess I just, even then, imagine being 13, 14 and being 6 foot already when all the boys, most of the boys are still shorter than you, and most everyone is shorter than you. But I just remember giraffes being tall meant something to me then. This is an old one too. I saw someone on Instagram stitching it, and I think it's by AAN. I don't know what the acronym stands for. But I enjoyed that with all the little houses. I can't see this in my house. I do love it. I loved stitching it, the symmetry, the houses, everything about it. But don't know that I would hang it here, but I do have a friend in mind. This is one of the Mirabilias. I don't remember which one she is. I just loved her because her dress reminded me, you know, of a 30s dress. And I really enjoyed stitching her. This is one of my favorite ones. I will have framed. Last time I took it in to have it quoted, it was over $200 with a basic frame and the matting, and I can't do it. So maybe I can thrift a frame now. But as part of Lincoln's inaugural address, his second inaugural address, and I think this too is by Erica Michaels. I just love it. It is in silks, and silks are so wonderful to work with, but gosh, I have so many DMC threads, and yes, they're wonderful to work with, but it's the expense of it, and to know that I would have to build up a collection of them again as I stitch with them, I'm not in for that. Too cheap, too cheap. And this is an ink circles, and I call this one Nessie because of the one on the bottom. It is huge. I wish now I had did it a little smaller, on smaller count. And I'm thinking this may be 32 and not even 28. Or maybe it is, no, it's 28. But it's just too big. I probably won't frame it. But I think it's gorgeous. But you see on the bottom border, that's why I call it Nessie. I think it's sea stars. Ink circles, sea stars. And I found it in the shop, and most of the ink circles patterns are just a printed computer generated design on the front, so it's not been stitched, most of them. And so I picked it up and I thought, I like it, and then I pulled the colors, and those colors were just beautiful. It was a fun stitch. But between this and the RATM Joy Quaker that I finished up at the beginning of the year, I think I'm over Quakers for a while. And this is a story piece. This is, like I said, my children were young, and our shop, our cross stitch shop that was here, they were really great about doing stitch alongs and just not really excuses, but I say excuses, to get us in there to be together to stitch. Not necessarily to buy. Of course they want you to buy. But you build up relationship with the women that also frequent the same store you do. And to this day, we still love each other. So there was a gentleman named Curtis Bowinger that was designing at the time and would do cross stitch Christmas patterns, but this was a mystery sample. It was the first one I had ever heard of. I was intrigued. I joined in. It was expensive for me. We were able to buy the patterns one at the time as the stitch along went on, so that was easier. But anyway, I did it, and it was awful. This is the design. Yes, that is the end of it. No, there were no additional ones. That's how it ended. But it was like a murder mystery, and you started off, I think you started off with the centerpiece with the white flowers, and then you get the top, and then each time you got a little more, and the story was just terrible. But I was bound and determined. A lot of the women just gave up, cut it off of their fabric, and didn't move forward because, like I said, we would laugh, but the story was just so bad, and the overall design was. But I was bound and determined. I had paid that much money to get this design at a time I could not really afford to do so, and I was going to finish it, and I did. And I think out of the group, there were only 2 of us. There may have been 3. I want to say there were 2 of us that finished it. So that's just a few of those designs thought I'd share with you today. As far as a giveaway, nothing much special. What I'm going to do is I thought I loved Ingeborg's idea of just giving away things that, patterns or designs that you'd recently finished. Other than this is used for the framing, so anyone who's interested in framing for themselves, this is what the Crafty Curator had mentioned on her, one of her most recent YouTube videos, and I went out and got one, but I must have hit I'm set up for the quick pay on Amazon, and I must have accidentally hit it twice, so I have a spare one, and I'm going to use that as part of the giveaway. And these are just 3 things that I have finished this year that I'm going to pass along with it. So this is Romance, the Sarah Spur Sampler by Carriage House, and the Peacock Pen Pillow. So, oh, that was nice. Sorry if you heard that. What I would like from you is just that you're a subscriber. In the comments below, just par for the course, please don't mention that you're putting in for the giveaway, because I would like for those that are putting in to actually watch my videos. Not because there's the giveaway, even though I mentioned it in my last one. Just, I don't know. Just let me, I need to decide what to have you, I didn't even decide what to have you put down there. Just tell me what the favorite thing you've ever stitched is, and why. I loved the stories last time I gave a giveaway. Everyone, just wonderful stories. Really made my day reading them over the weeks. And what we'll do is 2 weeks from today, I'll draw a winner. So just tell me your favorite thing you've stitched and why. Everyone have a great rest of the weekend. We'll see you back next week. Hopefully I can drag myself through my first work week after a vacation. Just thank goodness I've got some great co-workers, because they just make it bearable. Other than that, have a great weekend. We'll see you next weekend, and see you soon. Bye-bye.